Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal this Thursday. I hope the day is going well wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. Plenty to talk about today. Arsenal were in action earlier this morning or this afternoon, this evening, wherever it is you're watching this around the world. Beating Bournemouth, drawing to Bournemouth, 1-1 in their first pre-season friendly of the US tour, but then winning the penalty shootout. It wasn't a penalty shootout to decide the winner of the game, though, to be fair. Whatever happened, whatever the result, there was going to be a penalty shootout. So probably fair to say the game was a draw and then Arsenal won the penalty shootout. But we're going to discuss that. Lots of you have been getting in touch, giving your thoughts on the game. I'll go through that, go through my player ratings. I did watch the game. I know yesterday I said I probably wasn't going to watch the game, but I don't know. I couldn't resist the temptation. I didn't actually mean to wake up for it. I didn't set my alarm for it, but I just happened to wake up at 3:25. I think it was my brain telling me, get up, get out of bed, watch Arsenal. They're about to start. So I did go downstairs and watch the game. So we'll talk about that, go through some of my player ratings as well. So plenty to discuss. But we're going to talk a little bit about transfers to start up, just wrap things up. So Riccardo Calafiori, since last time I recorded a video, this has obviously moved on a lot. Total agreement now between Arsenal and Bologna for Calafiori. Deal is agreed. Medical is imminent for Calafiori, and he will be linking up with the squad in the USA, providing there is no very, very last minute hiccups. But this deal is now effectively done. Just waiting for it to be finalised. Like I said, medical, and then he will be in the USA with the squad. So first real significant signing of the summer, if you don't count David Raya's move being made permanent, about to happen. You know, Arsenal's number one choice target when it comes to improving the defence, the player Mikel Arteta really, really wanted. It's taken a bit of time getting it done, but Arsenal have got it done. The deal has been agreed. He is now going to have his medical, and we'll see him on the USA tour. So that is really exciting. Mikel Arteta was asked about him in the sort of post-match press conference following the game against Bournemouth. The quote is there on the screen if you're watching it on YouTube. He says, "No, there's no update. As soon as we have something to say, we'll be the first ones to say, you know that I don't like talking about external players, but this is the situation at the moment." So Arteta keeping his cards very close to his chest, as he always does when it comes to potential incoming transfers. But this is a deal now that has been agreed. And providing there are no last minute hiccups, like I said, with the medical or anything like that, then he will very, very soon be in a red and white Arsenal shirt and will be playing on I don't know about playing on the US tour, but he'll certainly be a part of the US tour. That is the plan. So from a potential big incoming to a potential big outgoing in Emile Smith-Rowe, don't think I'm ready for this one just yet. I have to say, I'm probably going to get a little bit teary talking about the potential exit of Emile Smith-Rowe, but that exit is now very, very close. Not happened, but very, very close. He was included. Obviously, he's over in the States with the touring squad. He was on the bench for the game against Bournemouth, but he didn't come on. Mikel was asked about it after the game, why he wasn't involved. And he said, there are things happening in the background at the moment, and we decided the best thing to do was keep him away from the game today. Of course, what is happening in the background is Arsenal and Fulham are now very, very close to agreeing a deal for Smith-Rowe. David Ornstein reported it last night. The talks were now really, really progressing between the two parties. My understanding is that it is £35 million around, give or take, deal for Smith-Rowe. That's including add-ons. For Fulham, that's going to be a club record transfer fee. For Arsenal, it's going to basically match their club record transfer fee received. So I think Alex Iwobi in that move to Everton, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain with his move to Liverpool. You all know my thoughts on Emile Smith-Rowe, and obviously I'm very, very disappointed this hasn't worked out. And I've had lots of people asking me, saying to me, why are you so bothered about Smith-Rowe leaving? He wasn't playing much, and I get that. I get all of that. And I think this is the right decision for all parties, Emile Smith-Rowe going. I've said that. But the reason I'm so sad about it, I think the reason I like Smith-Rowe so much is just kind of what he represents to me with this new look Arsenal. Him, Saka, him coming into the team on that Boxing Day against Chelsea. This is when Arsenal were at the lowest of the low under Arteta in the rebuild. They'd going into Christmas, they were about 17th in the league, 4 points above relegation. I'd just driven home from Everton, having seen Arsenal lose 2-1 there, in the deepest, darkest depths of COVID as well. And then Smith-Rowe was brought into this team, and suddenly, alongside Saka, suddenly this team that couldn't create, couldn't score, couldn't excite at all, was transformed by this young vibrancy that had come into the team. And he was so integral to that. And that's why he'll just always have such a special place in my heart, Emile Smith-Rowe. The goals, the movement, the ability to create, everything that had been lacking from that Arsenal team, he brought with him into that team. And he was homegrown as well, which obviously adds a little bit of an emotional tie to it as well. So that's why I'm so disappointed at the fact it's not worked out for Emile Smith-Rowe at Arsenal. A couple of you have got in touch about Emile. Sealord says, you're probably going to get loads of questions on ESR, but in case you see this, what do you think of the apparent 35 million fee? Some Arsenal fans have been saying good deal and others saying too low. But interestingly, most non-Arsenal fans I've seen have been saying it's a good deal for Arsenal. Comments about its lack of games and goals in the last 2 years saying Arsenal did well to get 35 million. What do you think? I think Arsenal did do well to get 35 million. Remember, that's 35 million all in. So Smith-Rowe is going to have to hit certain things with Fulham for Arsenal to get the full amount of that transfer. But going into this transfer window, when you're looking at Smith-Rowe's situation, how he hadn't really played very much, how he was clearly, available should a good offer come in. Everyone knew that. It was going to be very, very difficult for Arsenal to get more than 35 million, I think, for Emile Smith-Rowe. So I think it's a decent deal. I can understand from the outside why a lot of fans are looking at it. They've probably not even heard much of Smith-Rowe in the last couple of years. If you don't follow Arsenal, he's barely played. He's not scored for a long time. So you just don't really see his name mentioned. So they'll suddenly see that and say 35 million. That's a really good deal for Arsenal. Arsenal fans will obviously have different feelings about it from what I've just said in terms of how I feel about Smith-Rowe. Lots of Arsenal fans will feel the same and are disappointed and think maybe, had his career kicked on in the trajectory that it was heading initially, 35 million seems pretty low. But I think given the circumstances now, you can't really complain at a £35 million deal. Jaswant says, Charles, ESR deal almost done. Sad to see him leave, but he needs to play and we're getting a decent fee as well. I think we'll actively be looking to replace him. Who do you think it is? Mikel Moreno is of interest, but I still think we may go for Eze or Olmo. Who would Charles prefer out of those three? Well, I think Moreno is certainly the closest out of the three of them to actually happening. I don't know. When I look at Moreno, I don't look at him as a Smith-Rowe replacement. I think I look at, and we're going to talk about Ethan Nwaneri later on in this show, who I thought was very, very good against Bournemouth and showed some really good signs. And I think, on one way, we always say about, or lots of people say about Mikel, they hammer him for not giving youngsters a chance. So at some point, you've got to give youngsters a chance. And I think if you sign in Moreno, for example, I don't see him as now out replacement for Smith-Rowe because I think they're very, very different players, but I think they can play in the same position. So he might sort of take that left 8 role going forward. But then do you need to actually go out and sign a like-for-like replacement for Smith-Rowe? I'm not sure you do because he barely played anyway. And those minutes that he did have would be perfect for Nwaneri's development this season. And you need to show Nwaneri a pathway now because he's clearly good enough to be in around the first team. And again, I'll talk about him in a little bit when we get onto the Bournemouth game. So, I take Moreno if that's the sort of direction that Arsenal are heading in and what they want to do in that sort of left 8 role. But I do think Nwaneri has to be at the forefront of everyone's minds when it comes to what they're going to do in the transfer market this summer. And you can't just keep signing players and that could go ahead of him in the pecking order because he needs to be left a pathway because he's clearly good enough to be in and around this environment. So that's my thoughts on it. I hope that answers it pretty well. Okay, moving on to the Bournemouth game then. Arsenal obviously 1-1. Fabio Vieira with a goal in the first half of a volley. Nice little play by Reece Nelson down the left-hand side. Stood the ball up. Nelson got the volley. I've got a sneaky feeling that hit Eddie Nketiah on the way through. It sounded like it took a deflection. None of the videos really showed, none of the replays really showed it definitively. But I think Vieira and Nketiah were laughing about it afterwards as well. So I think it might have got in off Eddie. But it was a lovely strike from Vieira, a really good technique at the back post to get the volley in. I thought Arsenal were good in the first half. There was lots of changes in the second half. So a lot more youngsters came on, especially in defence. Or I say that actually saying that Salah played in the first half of midfield and obviously Aiden Heaven played at centre back, but some of the substitutes who came on in the second half I don't think were quite up to the standard of what we've seen in the first half, especially in defence, and Arsenal seemed to lose their way a little bit. I think Bournemouth just about deserved their goal that they got. I mean, it was a huge deflection. It was very, very fortunate from Semenya's shot, just hit Ben White and looped over Karl Hein, who I think was the only way Karl Hein was going to concede a goal in that game, was a sort of deflection that we saw. But on the whole, it was a decent run out for Arsenal. When they won the penalty shootout, of course, only Leandro Trossard, the only player to miss, he hit the post, but everyone else scored, and Arsenal won thanks to a couple of saves from Karl Hein. You can see the sort of starting lineup there. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it on the screen. You had Carl Hein in goal. Obviously, Ben White was playing at right back. You had Timber and Heaven as the two centre backs, with Miles Lewis-Skelly again playing at left back. Then you had Partey as a holding midfielder, Salah-Dean and Salah-Dean, and who was it? Who was playing Vieira? No, Vieira was on the right. So Salah-Dean and Nwaneri were playing in those two roles ahead. And then you had Vieira on the right, Nelson on the left, and Eddie and Nketiah up front. And I thought it was a decent enough showing in the first half. I thought Nwaneri was really, really good. And he didn't do anything massively standout, but I just think everything he did, every time he was on the ball, he just looked like he belonged in this environment. There were some of the youngsters you saw, especially in that second half, who came on. Omar Rekik obviously really, really struggled. I thought Charles Soga Jr. struggled a little bit as well. Those sort of players, Nichols, they're so far off being ready for a first team. And I think you can see that when they come in and they get sort of the game time that they're getting because of the lack of senior players available. But Nwaneri, when you look at him, he just looks like he belongs in this environment. I'm not saying first 11 starter or anything like that, but I'm just saying he looks absolutely at home and comfortable in this first team squad environment. And I thought he showed that on the pitch with everything he did during the game. Mikel was asked about the youngsters and he says they have impressed us in a really positive way. That's the thing. It's not easy to come up against to the level and the standards that we are putting ourselves into right now. And they're really, really getting there. They're very close. They're a joy to work with every day. And yeah, I thought Nwaneri he just really demonstrated in his performance, I thought, how close he is and how comfortable he looks in this first team environment. I thought Lewis-Skelly did well at left back as well. I thought Aidan Heaven was very impressive alongside Timber at centre back. So those three can be very, very happy with the work that they did in that game. And it'd be interesting to see how much more game time they get as the games increase in terms of level of quality against United and then against Liverpool as well. Obviously, a very good night for Carl Hein, who got the nod in goal, played very well in the game, made a couple of really good stops. One in the first half from Solanke when he went through, which he tipped onto the bar. Another one, I think it was Semenya, who went through one-on-one in the second half, and he stayed up, made himself big, saved with his legs, made 2 saves in the penalties. So it was a really good night for Carl Hein. Mikel said, I'm very happy for him. Obviously, he had to be really patient and wait for his opportunity. He came back from his holidays really sharp and prepared. He knew that he had big games ahead of him, and he started tonight, and I think he had a really good performance. On whether Hein will leave on loan now, which we are all expecting at some point in the window. He says that's a conversation we are having at the moment. Obviously, David and Aaron are away at the moment, and we're really short in the position. We want to develop our players, especially a player like Carl with big potential and a big future ahead of him. He needs to play games, so we're going to explore that option as well. Sorry, I just got a bit of a sip of coffee to keep myself awake. And I thought he did very, very well, Carl Hein. And he will go out on loan. I'm absolutely sure of that. He showed that he's good enough to be playing regular first-team football at a high level again today. He's obviously an established international of Estonia. And at some point during this window, he will go. He's needed right now because, as Mikel said, that Aaron and David are away because of their involvement in the Euros. But I'm sure Carl Hein will head out and get a very good loan spell. And he certainly put himself in the shop window with this sort of performance. And he's got another couple to come against Liverpool and United as well. Right, player ratings wise, I'm just rating the first 11, the starting 11 in this, which you can see on screen. I give him Carl Hein a 9 out of 10. I gave White a 7. Timber, I thought, looked really, really good in that first half. Timber, really impressed with him. Gave him an 8. Heaven and Lewis-Skelly, I gave a 7. Partey, I gave a 7. Salah, I was impressed with. I thought he looked really lively, Salah, in everything he did. The same as Nwaneri, so I gave the pair of those two 8. So I gave Vieira a 7, Nelson a 7, and Nketiah a 7. I thought Nketiah looked sharp in the first half. Thought he led the line pretty well. He gave the Bournemouth centre-backs plenty of problems. He got in front of them, held the ball up, won some fouls. Just looked pretty sharp, I thought, Eddie. And the fact him and Reece Nelson both started despite everything that's going on transfer-wise at the moment. I think that kind of showed as well that, as I was saying yesterday when I was reporting my information on Eddie Nketiah, yes, Marseille want him, but nothing is close. The negotiations are not close to being done at all. And so I thought he would play, and he did. I think the fact that obviously Emile didn't play last night and those two did shows just how close Emile's move to Fulham is now happening. Okay, moving on to some questions and comments from you guys as well. I pulled some of them together in terms of what you were saying about the game. A Major MVP says, hi, Charles. This comment is regarding the friendly against Bournemouth. The fact Miles Lewis-Skelly and Nwaneri stayed on for 60 and 85 minutes respectively reassured the youngsters and the fans they'll play a big role this season. I've also made peace that ESR will be leaving the club imminently. Yes, I think we're all going to have to make peace with that. Yeah, I did think it was quite telling that Nwaneri especially stayed on for 85 minutes when everyone else was being changed. Nwaneri got a good run out, proper run out, 85 minutes, which was very positive. Deep Kundu says, hi, Charles. Nwaneri looks ready for the first team, combines comfortably with the seniors and looks press resistant. I think he should start alongside Odegaard against United. If ESR leaves, would Nwaneri get the same amount of minutes as ESR would have? And that's what I'm talking about. It's a really good point. You know, do you have to sign a like-for-like replacement for ESR? I don't think you do, because you've got one really in Nwaneri who you need to be given minutes to. I'm not saying to start Nwaneri in every single game, but Smith Rowe wasn't going to be starting in many games at all. So those sort of handful of minutes that, say, Smith Rowe got last season with a couple of starts are perfect for what Nwaneri needs this season, if you ask me. So, and I think that could be the option that they end up going with. They'll sign someone, and it might well be Moreno, but he's a very different type of profile to ESR and Nwaneri, if you see what I mean. Yevon Wonders says, hello, Charles. Stayed up to watch the game this morning, 5:30 a.m. Kenyan time, and it was a good game overall. One player who stood out to me was Aiden Heaven. A good performance by a 17-year-old, good defensively and even better on the ball. Looking forward to seeing more of him on this tour. Honourable mentions for Reece and Nwaneri too. Yeah, I thought Reece did look pretty lively down the left-hand side. And as you said, Yevon, Aiden Heaven, showing everyone why he's so highly rated within Arsenal. Does look very, very comfortable on the ball for a 17-year-old as well, which is very, very promising for a centre-back. Luke says, Arsenal versus Bournemouth. Nelson a standout performer in the first half. Timber looking sharp. Not sure about Odegaard's little goatee, though. Yeah, but Odegaard, what a performance in the second half. I thought he came on. He just looked head and shoulders above everyone else on the pitch. I probably should have mentioned that when I was going through the subs, when I was going through the ratings. I only did the first half ratings, of course. But you had Odegaard came on, who, as I said, I thought was just exceptional. Was just miles better than anyone else on the pitch. He was sensational, Martin Odegaard. Some of the touches, brilliant. Jesus looked quite sharp, combined a couple of times well with Odegaard. Kivior scored the winning penalty. Trossard missed his penalty. Jorginho came on. Zinchenko came on. Then you had the youngsters, Jimmy Gower, Josh Nichols, Omar Rekik and Charles Sego Jr., obviously, Omar Rekik, it was his mistake for the goal, got robbed to possession, slipped as well, that led to Semenya's one-on-one chance. Just didn't have a great game when he came on, Omar Rekik. It was unfortunate for him, obviously, and I thought those changes, especially the defenders who came on, just made it a little bit easier for Bournemouth to get at Arsenal and to look a little bit more dangerous at Arsenal. But I thought Martin Odegaard was absolutely fantastic. I didn't notice his little goatee, though, Luke. I have to say, I'll look out for that in the pictures. I'll go and have a look for it. Twink the Kid says, what a game for Carl Hines, stepping up in the face of our first team keepers away on holiday. A fairly strong Bournemouth team and very high press. He stayed pretty collected. Extremely unfortunate to concede that whack goal. All in all, for the first pre-season game, there's some great moments and some not so great highlights besides Carl Nwaneri, Timber, Odegaard and Vieira. My only complaint was not to see a single second of ESR, but we know now, you know, because of what's going on with Fulham, that's why we didn't see a single second of ESR. I feel like it's time for him to go, though, even though he's Arsenal through and through. But to not get a minute in what could be his last game in the squad is upsetting. I mean, it is a bit upsetting, but what if he comes on and gets injured and suddenly you've basically got a 35 million deal agreed with Fulham, and then suddenly gets injured and that deal gets has to get ripped up? You know, it's not ideal from a business point of view. It'd be great for him to come on and get that little moment, but I think from a business point of view, when you've got a deal of that magnitude to set up, it's very, you know, you can't really risk it, if you see what I mean. John Wren says he's only pre-season, but most of our youngsters against Bournemouth look bang average. I'm not really impressed at all. Timber had a good game. Yeah, Timber did have a good game. I think that's a bit harsh on some of the youngsters. I think some of the ones, like I said, who came on in the second half just didn't quite look up to the standard yet to be able to handle that sort of environment in terms of the first team, and some of them are a bit older than others as well in that. But I thought in the whole, certainly the youngsters who started the game, as I said, Miles, Ethan, and Salah, I thought they all showed that they, you know, can more than cut it in and around the first team. So maybe a little bit harsh, but I see what you mean if you're just talking mainly about the second half substitutes who came on to help try and see the game out. Right, that's it from me, everyone. Thank you very much for your time. As always, I should have pointed it out at the beginning of the show, actually, but for those of you who are still watching or listening, myself and James Ben just sitting down later on today for Inside Arsenal Extra Time. So anything you want us to discuss in that show, you know what to do. Usual thing, get down into the comments, start it with Extra Time, and then I'll ask your question, give your comment, your opinion. We'll pull some of them together as always and get them included in the show. Until then, everyone, have a fantastic day. I'm off to get some sleep, hopefully, if my kids allow it. I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.